Now, I can't say every nutrition documentary ever made is bad, but I've seen all the popular ones, and I haven't seen one yet that I'd actually recommend. And the reason for this is that they're generally created by producers that already have an idea in mind that they then try to prove to you. What's your opinion on eggs?
So I haven't made up my mind yet on eggs and nutrition, and that's just because the research is inconclusive. Eggs have mixed evidence for health, but a lot more positive evidence than there ever was.
And in nutrition, this is especially easy to do because there are so many divergent findings in the scientific literature. So any documentarian could just go searching for studies that support their position and then piece it together into a narrative that feels very convincing to the viewer.
The most recent trial, or the most recent large trial from probably like this spring, compared diabetics who ate 12 eggs or more a week versus those who ate like 1 or 2 eggs. And this was a very large randomized trial, so very strong evidence. And it showed that there was no risk difference at all in any cardiometabolic risk factor. So that means cholesterol, triglycerides, blood sugar, any of that stuff.
You can contrast this with actual scientific literature, where the goal isn't to prove any given position, but rather to collect evidence and draw conclusions based on whatever the data says, whether it supports your bias or not.
And the reason this is an important trial is because the evidence before was that eggs are probably okay to eat unless you're diabetic, and they show worse outcomes for patients who are diabetic. But now that there's this larger trial that kind of flips the previous evidence, it's a strong trial, and it kind of shows even in people who are susceptible, diabetics, to worse lipids, eggs don't seem to do that much bad.
No.
Now, the research team had looked up all of the published evidence on dietary cholesterol's effect on serum cholesterol. It was somewhere between 150 and 200 papers, and they made some pretty astonishing findings. Number one, they found that over 60% of all the studies were actually funded by the egg industry, which on multiple occasions have been found to manipulate study design and statistics in an attempt to try to minimize the hazards associated with the consumption of eggs and dietary cholesterol. And number two, even though most studies were actually funded by the egg industry, the vast majority of them found a negative effect on serum cholesterol in regards to dietary cholesterol intake. So the overwhelming scientific consensus is that though dietary cholesterol isn't the only factor in play, it definitely does have a negative effect on serum cholesterol.
Also, just because something is on television or on Netflix or even has a bunch of views on YouTube doesn't mean it's reliable. Generally, this sort of reach just comes from whether or not the content is emotionally appealing enough to attract a broad audience, and that tends to come with a lot of bias. So,
all right, y'all know what time it is. Red Pill Vegan. Next.